Yo, Kadala. Let's kick it. Blood shards, baby. Blood shards, baby. Alright, stop. Cause I'm full on blood shards. Purple goblins making farming loot so hard. Town port every 15 minutes. Getting sick of this 500 limit. Will it ever change? No, I don't know. Maybe. If people keep, posting on the forums, then the devs might read that and change their mind in the future. Farm, cause what else you gonna do? Kadala keeps giving me Firewalker boots. Pissed off, cause I can't find a Unity. Oh damn it, just realized I need 2 of these. Filled up on blood shards, I better port back. Gonna get a bunch of yellow crafting mats. If there was a goblin, yo, I'll loot it. Unless it was purple, then I say screw it. Blood shards, baby. Alright, it's my next best attempt at rapping there. Figure I'll stick to just white people rapping from now on.
Isn't that white people rapping?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I'm sticking. I guess either way, anytime I'm trying to do a parody, it just sounds like white people rapping because my singing is about as good as talking. It's not the best.
I enjoyed that. I was pleased.
Thank you.
A little throwback. Actually, what was funny was all I could think about while listening to that was the little tiff that they had with Under Pressure and how that beat was supposed to be different because he's like, I don't have the dun-dun there. You in here? It goes like dun-dun.
Yeah, I should have got that in. I was thinking about halfway through just switching it up into Under Pressure. And be like, wait, which song is this a parody of? Who knows?
Ooh, keep them guessing.
What is it?
Yeah. Yeah, but we were talking about blood shards and how we don't like the 500 limit. Nothing gets the devs' attention like a good parody, I think. Just get the conversation going.
Yeah, how can they deny us now?
I think so. Yeah.
There's song evidence. That's pretty much like a winning verdict, if you will.
I think so. Yeah. Step 1, get Ogchilds into the game. Step 2, increase blood shard limit.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess we just recently realized that a lot of the new viewers of the show don't know the Ogchild story. And maybe for our Weekend Gaming, we could recap our pre-show recap of us trying to remember the Ogchild story.
Yeah, so basically the story behind Ogchilds is, I think, almost from the beginning. I want to say it was like episode 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say Ogguilds, and I see C's where there are no C's. And I said Ogchilds, and then that was corrected to us in email. I think Leviathan, you were the one that sent in like the first email pointing it out, and then it was like, oh, screw it, let's just roll with it, and it just became a thing.
Yes, it was in episode 15. I'm trying to go back through our emails to see when I sent one in, and wow. I am always going to say that it was not me per se that pointed it out. I was just the conduit, if you will. I was the mouthpiece from someone in the clan that I can't remember at this time who said, "Hey, you should tell that 9-ball guy that it's all guilds or all guilds, not Ogchilds." And then the whole fiasco started.
And everything since then is history.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So, I think Blizzard throws in some items from time to time. Maybe we don't care if it's gray. Let it be the first full gray set.
That would be awesome.
Gray set.
No or all the bonuses are like negative things or like really negligible things.
Mm-hmm. I actually submitted an idea for one of the things that we're going to talk about later in the episode, but for the Legendary Workshop, the live stream at BlizzCon, my idea for the live stream was, the Ogchild set, which makes it so that way it gave you cooldown reduction as well as increased attack speed, because you learn a faster way of casting your spell or the incantations for your spell by leaving out syllables And, you know, but it also had the ability that sometimes randomly when you cast a spell, it would cast something else.
You just be messing up the pronunciation of all your spells.
Exactly. You sometimes mispronounce, you say the wrong incantation, and so you get a different spell than what you had intended. But it would actually be like a benefit. So if you're casting Magic Missile, it might drop like a meteor, you know, instead. That would just, you know, match the same elemental type, but just for like little fun shenanigans.
But then sometimes the meteor would like hit you instead of the enemy.
Like miscast and everything. I would love that. That'd actually be hilarious. Troll set. Apparently it was episode 9 was the first mentioning. That was when Ogchild was born.
So Kirk Henshi here has been a long time viewer in that case. He even remembers it better than we do.
Yeah. I'm thinking he looked it up, but if he remembered it, that's pretty impressive there.
Do we have a wiki?
just Westmarch wiki.
That's the next step.
Yeah.
I guess to kind of transition into our weekend gaming, speaking of Kurokenshi, he actually joined us for our stream over the weekend when we went back and played Diablo 2 for the new ladder reset. Yeah. And so...
How are you guys doing in ladders now? You guys up there in the ranks?
I think the ladder itself is pretty much already done for Diablo 2, even though it only reset 2 weeks ago. I want to say maybe even before we recorded that episode this weekend, they had all 99s and at least the softcore ladder.
Wow.
Yeah, I had looked at maybe I looked at the hardcore, but I know I saw a bunch of people at 98 before we started. And I was like, oh man, the ladder reset like what, 4 days ago? People have been grinding hard on this thing.
I wouldn't have been surprised if, like...
Grinding.
Synonymous
with botting.
I wouldn't have been that surprised if we got to the show today and Leviathan had just been playing D2 since Saturday. It was like just hitting 99. Guys, I'm quitting D3. I'm going back to the roots.
The addiction is strong. How do you know I didn't, though? I could be one of those guys up there.
Yeah, you really have no way of knowing. You can create an infinite number of accounts in D2, so you don't even know if he's on your friend list still.
Yeah.
The world will never know. I'll never tell, that's for sure.
Well, do you have anything else exciting in your week, Nineball?
Unfortunately, I wanted to try and finish, even without the community buff, I wanted to try and finish leveling my Witch Doctor on the PTR, and with some of the new changes and the focus testing that they're wanting to get through, I'm motivated again to try and get it to 70. But yeah, free time, I've not had a lot of free time lately. So, like my weekends are normally like, that's my social time, because during the weekdays I don't get the chance to do like anything. This is like one of the few things I actually get to sit down and talk about video games and actually have an enjoyable evening. But on the weekends is like my social time, and I normally spend it with my tabletop group, and that's, you know, going through and playing Warhammer or something along those lines, which I'm actually doing pretty well in my league. I've gotten myself back to second place, even though I was out for 3 weeks due to the whole health thing. But even though I'm at second place in the league, I am like at half the points of the guy in first, because he's lost one match in the entire like 2 months that we've been running the league so far.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
So is it total points at the end wins, or does it just matter if you get in the playoffs?
It matters to get into the playoffs, pretty much, and then of course the top player gets to play against the lowest ranked player. And then it goes from there. Like when our 40K league, I went in as number 1, but I ended up losing in the semifinals, so I didn't make it.
Huh, interesting.
You guys like put money in or anything, or it's just like, way to go, you won?
It's mainly just bragging rights. There's some corporate rules that prevent them from doing anything other than that. Though we're going to be starting up another 40K league when the fantasy league stops, and some of us are just unofficially might be putting some money down on it.
Reported.
Side action. Did you say reported?
Yeah, reported. Stab me in the back.
Funny. Well, yeah, my week also didn't contain a whole lot of Diablo. I have been busy with house stuff. Decided to clean the house. That was a daunting task, by my own fault, I guess. But yeah, other than that, been working on my StarCraft map, and been spending today kind of getting back into the Diablo scene since I haven't been playing much of it after writing that parody. I watched the Legendary Workshop stream, did some research, and yeah, ready to talk about some stuff. There's a few interesting things I think that came out of the workshop stream that I'm sure we'll be talking about later on in the show.
Some nuggets tucked in there.
Yeah. What about you, Leviathan? How was your week?
The week was good. On Saturday, of course, we did the Diablo 2 stream, which was a bunch of fun. That was also the first time I started listening to Christmas music this season, so I'm kind of in that spirit now. Which is a lot of just jolliness and excitement. And then the weather decided to match, and I actually got sick because we got a huge cold front that came through. And we haven't had much snow yet, but we got some nice freezing rain, and I think they call it wintry mix. That's the New England term for the weather can't decide what the hell it wants to be. So that was a bit of a bummer. And as a result, I was actually home sick yesterday and today. So it gave me a little bit of extra Diablo time, which is always nice. And I got to watch the Legendary Workshop live and do like a little bit of a live recap of it. So that was advantageous. But yeah, the one thing that I've started to focus on now that I hope, the season 1 is on its way out, started to kind of attack the Greater Rift boards a bit more aggressively, and I strong-armed a couple of the clan mates into putting groups together to see if we could attack like the 4-player, 3-player, 2-player ones. And Tibbledorf was a guy I want to shout out because he actually had his build up for Playaway Thursday voting, and I guess that's probably a news item, but he unfortunately didn't win the vote, but his witch doctor build was really cool and something to look into if you're into mixing pets and support and different stuff. He has a really, really well-built monk, and he's in like 22nd place on the monk solo leaderboard. So I was like, dude, I'm going with you. I know you can play some ZDPS support monk. And then we kind of built a group around him, and we got like our 4-player group, I want to say, is in like the top 400 maybe. Our 3-player was in the top like 300, and our 2-player is in, I think, almost outside of the top 100 or so.
Oh, very nice.
Nice.
We unfortunately did get a Demon Hunter killed in the process for the 4-player.
Oh, no. Worth it. Ooh. It's just a Demon Hunter.
Right? Those are a dime a dozen.
You guys.
Maybe the worst... Well, no, that was a pretty awful thing that happened, but the worst personal thing that happened was today I was playing, and I've been working on my Demon Hunter myself, and found, 9-ball, some... what are those gloves called? The ones that are really good?
No. Not doing it. Not
playing the game. Is it Marauders?
No. No, those are the green ones, right? I found a couple of those. Something Tisker and Tybo.
No.
But don't found them, and they were like the worst rolls ever. So
it's okay, Leviathan, because we had 2 people send in amazing Tasker and Theos this week.
I'm very excited to see what I could have had.
Yep.
9-ball 2.
No. Not bitter at all. Nope.
It's pretty funny.
So that about wraps it up for me, though. It's been fun. I've been still enjoying things. I'm actually looking to transition back over to PTR to test some things out now that there've been some new changes added, which I am sure we can jump into when we transition to news.
That sounds like a good transition to me. News. Speaking of when we transition into news.
It's a very self-aware segue.
I'm
getting a little bit lazy.
And you said segue.
Yeah, Ooh. That's how you know it's a segue, though. I think all good segues include the word segue.
Of course. Of course.
But yeah, I guess
we need to get an image of a segue and just like flash it on the screen.
Don't even have one. Just start talking about something else after there's an image. Maybe a sound bit for the podcast listeners.
I would love it. All right.
But now that I derailed the segue, on to the news.
So yeah, since I was just mentioning it, I suppose we'll start with the patch for the 2.1.2 PTR went live on December 8th, which is earlier this week. And there weren't too many big things to it, just a couple of small changes here and there. So we were spitballing around thinking that maybe this is a sign that the PTR will be done soon, and then perhaps we'll get the announcement that Season 1 will be done soon as well, and then we can start counting down those 30 days. But just going through some of the things that stood out for me in this new patch were that they made changes to the treasure goblins, because again, similar to Archon's lovely intro for us, we noted that when you get those blood shard packs of goblins, you just ridiculously hit the lotto in terms of blood shards, but you also have to make 18 billion trips back to town. So this change seems targeted at that, because the special treasure goblin packs will spawn with a mixture of random special goblins and regular goblins. So it doesn't sound like you'll ever get packs of just like 10 or 15 blood shard goblins anymore, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, you're not going to have the explosion of 4,000 blood shards anymore. So I guess you could still get a little bit of benefit out of the rest of them. Because I guess that would kind of suck, what if you're a month into Season 2 and you got one of those goblin packs and it's all the crafting mat one?
Yeah, that's true. That would be a pretty crappy stitch, because you'd likely have all those mats by then.
Yep. At least this way, if you ever do have one of those spawn, I guess you're guaranteed to get some blood shards out of it and some gems as well. But yeah, yes, it's both good and bad.
Mm-hmm. The other changes that went in were ones that we kind of were cognizant of. They made the switch for the Barbarian Furious Charge rune on Dreadnought that now gives 2 charges. And I've actually been kind of monitoring the situation over there, and many of the Barbs do not see the Raycore set changes as positive ones. I'll be curious to see what happens after they get the next couple of days to test it out, if maybe they change their tune. But right now, they're all saying that the set is way less powerful than it used to be, mostly because they lose that pull feature, which was also acting as a CC for them, which kept the mobs from kind of attacking them and boosting their survivability. So
yeah, I'd hope that if it still seems weaker by the time the patch is coming close, that Blizzard would consider buffing it, because it definitely didn't seem like they intended to nerf the set.
No, because that's kind of been the party line all along, right? Is that any of the changes that they're making, they want them to be for the better. They're trying to bring all the sets that they're making changes to in line with the standard power, if you will, of the Marauder set. So yeah, we can only hope you're right. One thing that was interesting that I saw, and I was kind of like, whoa, why? They took out the Band of Untold Secrets. It's a ring. It just no longer drops, but which was explained on the Legendary Workshop. It's a little plug for that in an upcoming news segment. But they replaced it with a wizard ring that will be coming in for Season 2, and that ring is called the Halo of Arliss, and it specifies that your ice armor now provides 50 to 60% melee damage reduction and automatically casts Frost Nova whenever you take 10% of your life in damage. So this is specific to wizards. And the early prognosis on that is it's not powerful enough, because it has to compete with Unity and Ring of Rogrander.
Yeah.
So
that's gonna be rough, yeah, because I guess we're not there yet, but the new legendary item's gonna be a ring too, and it's definitely a lot more powerful than that.
Right. So in a way, if you're like, wait, this is our Season 2 item that we're supposed to be looking for as wizards, why should we get excited about this when you're clearly already have 2 that are like way more powerful, and then you're introducing a third that will further like not want me to choose this?
Yeah. And speaking of wizards getting more Hydra buffs, which is surprising to me when Hydra's already such a popular skill with Firebird set.
This was one of the changes that made me most interested out of this most recent patch, actually. It's like, I guess it's just, the way that they word it. One of the changes is, instead of greatly increasing the amount of Hydra attacks per cast, it significantly increases the amount of Hydra attacks per cast.
It's funny, too, because like the min-maxers and the data miners, they know exactly what the number is So it's not like you can't figure it out. I just wonder why they won't say like it instead of shooting 3 per second, it shoots 4 per second now.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know. But yeah, it seems, I guess they're just tweaking that one. So now they're reducing the damage but increasing the number of attacks in order to try and better balance it. I guess maybe to reduce burst damage or something along those lines.
Yeah, it just seems like further tuning to the initial change they made. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know if it has something to do with the proc coefficient. They haven't really clearly laid out the theory behind the change, as far as I know.
We will have to wait and see. Or maybe they will just kind of keep that one close to their vest, but it is kind of curious. Looking over the list of other, this is the change I was personally most excited about, is that the stack sizes of crafting materials and gems is going from 1,000 to 5,000.
Wow.
Space. So much space. I went in on one of my alts on the PTR that was primarily holding crafting mats and gems, and her inventory was completely full. And by the time I, stocked all the things up to their 5,000 max, I had like 16 extra slots.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's significant. Adds a lot more space.
You guys see that they're taking back Shard of Hate to somewhat how it was before.
Yeah. They're unnerfing it.
Yeah, so I guess initially with Shard of Hate there was a bug, but then even once they fixed the bug, they felt like it was too powerful. The bug caused it to proc more often than it was supposed to, but the other way they nerfed it was they made it so that it goes through a proc coefficient. Before that, skills that hit faster were better for Shard of Hate, because every time you hit, Shard of Hate will proc 2 damage. So it was really big with Whirlwind Barbs. The question now, since they're unbuffing it, changing it back so it procs every time you hit, is this going to be like mandatory for Whirlwind Barbs when the Whirlwind set comes out?
Maybe. Well, yeah, I know one of the things that they had changed on it is that like the internal cooldown for the proc itself was resetting every time that you did an offhand attack.
Yeah, that was the bug.
And yeah, that was the main bug that was pushing it into the crazy proc ranges, and so they're greatly lowering that what that internal cooldown is, but it's still going to be effective. So you probably won't see like back-to-back procs unless they're doing it as a half a second in the internal cooldown. But it should be interesting seeing it get buffed back up to the point where hopefully it's usable, if not just the best in slot, which still is pretty cool. It's an awesome weapon.
Yeah, and it would be nice to see that come back actually, because a lot of the builds currently after the buff of two-handers, most of them just default to two-handers. So it'd be nice to see a build that actually benefits from 2 one-handers. Some mods testing this out on stream yesterday, I think. And his barb wasn't super well geared, but it looked like the procs were coming out pretty effectively. So hopefully, maybe there's hope.
That's interesting. I remember if I remember correctly, when they initially announced the changes to Shard of Hate, they called them both. I don't know if they said bugs but problems. It didn't seem like they were making a choice to nerf it. It seemed like they were just fixing Shard of Hate, which caused it to get a nerf. Maybe other people remember differently, but when John Yang was talking about it in the Legendary Workshop, he was saying that after they fixed it, they were like, oh, it's still too powerful, and was talking about it more in just a way of just nerfing the item and not a fix. And I wonder how much different their intention was than how it came across in the blue posts. But,
yeah, that's actually really interesting, because it kind of lends itself to a conversation I was having with JR, I think yesterday. We were kind of talking about some of the mechanics and how they work in Hearthstone and how they get sold to players, because there was this one thing where if you have one card on the board and then this second card that causes an attack, every time you attack, it heals your hero for that much. But if you have this other card, it actually turns that into damage. And because of the way that the effect on the healing card works, you actually auto-kill yourself. And I'm like, well, to me, that sounds like a bug. And they're like, no, it's a feature. Like, isn't this so crazy that this thing can happen? And so we got into this kind of philosophical argument on what is determined as a bug versus like a intended feature is really how the devs sell it to you, if you think about it. Because there could be things that come up in development and they're like, oh man, like this is game breaking, it's a bug, we need to fix it. But on the other side, if there's something that's not game breaking, but it could be specified as a bug, but they either don't want to change it or they don't have like the tech to change it or the time to change it, then they could just tell you it's a feature and then later like remove it. Like how do we really know what is a bug and what is a feature, you know?
I think Unity was the perfect example of that, because like you guys had heard Dev saying that Unity was intended to work that way, that Unity was added to give solo players more defense, which made no sense to me. And since then, both Wyatt Cheng and John Yang have said that Unity wasn't supposed to work that way, that it was just unintended, and they decided to keep it. And I wonder if that's like devs just misremembering and like honestly just being like, no, I think that's how we wanted it to be, or if it really is a little. I don't know if deceitful is too strong of a word, but saying like, "Oh no, totally, that's how it was supposed to work."
Yeah, it's like you can co-opt it to spin it. This is the way that we want you to believe it's supposed to be. But I mean, I'm sure they work on so many things too that they truly may not remember whether it's a thing that they tried to address or a thing that they wanted included.
Yeah.
And who knows how many iterations they went through with the items themselves and the designs and procs and things like that, how you'd be able to keep all of it straight from one patch to another.
This is very true. Especially when they're like working forward too, so the things that we're concerned about may not even be things that they have thought about in a while, since they're probably on like patch, next patch or something. Or expansions, wink wink, maybe.
Wink, wink, say no more.
Yeah. If you're talking to Travis Day, you won't even get winks. He'll just talk to you about the next expansion. He loves to just give things away.
That's why I love that guy. It's just like, no buts about it.
Yeah.
Just the facts, man.
Just the facts.
This change in the PTR, when I read this, I thought about you, Archon. Remember when we were talking about the Gem of Ease before, you were looking at the upgrade amount for that, and you're like, +1 experience? That seems kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then they bumped this. Well, it's weird because they took the original base of it down from 1,000 at just the non-leveled up rank. They moved that down to +500 experience per kill, and then the bonus or the upgrade per rank now is +50 over +1 before.
Yeah, so it almost doesn't even seem like it was a mistake at first.
I think that's really how they intended it.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, +1. But yeah, this is much better. You actually getting something substantial when you level up the gem instead of it just not mattering once you get to 25.
Yeah, because by level 10, it looks like you're back to where it originally was, and then you get even better from there.
Yeah, by rank 11 is equivalent to the old rank 50.
That's
a good way. Yeah, it's an interesting way of putting it. Unreal.
Pretty hilarious.
It's good to know that they look at those things, though, and you're like, yeah, there's something about that doesn't look quite right. How about a controversial change? Conduit pylons finally got the nerf that we've been asking for, but did they go far?
It's a good question.
So the change that they made to the conduits is that they now scale off of your weapon damage. So the damage that they deal is based solely on your weapon damage, and they can only attack a limited number of targets. I haven't used one on PTR yet, so I haven't seen it in action. It also will no longer attack the same target quite as frequently as it used to. So that means it's going to jump around a lot more. The philosophy behind this, because there was actually a separate blue post that specified why they were making this change. And the philosophy is that they still want it to be good in AoE/multiple target scenarios while being less effective against single targets. Because, of course, the issue with it previously was Greater Rift Guardians and kind of saving the conduit for that in order to take them down as quickly as possible. So people have been testing, and they are not happy.
Yeah, people are thinking that it's just been taken a little bit too far, because some of the reports that I've seen are saying that it's somewhere around, once you get to Greater Rift 40 and higher, it's maybe 5 to 10% of like the Rift Guardian's health. Like, so it's been hugely nerfed. Instead of like taking them down by 50% or more, it's now barely even a tickle.
People are even saying on against like elite targets and even non-elites, like some of the Golgors are the ones that have a bit hardier HP. They're barely scratching them. So, whereas before, those things would absolutely melt from Conduit.
I wonder how much time all this Conduit changing is taking them. I wonder if at some point they'll just be like, maybe we should have just removed pylons.
Maybe we should have.
Because all these changes are also going to affect regular rifts too, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of a shame, I think, because who cares if you can be super OP for a while in regular rifts? But now Conduit pilots are never going to feel awesome. Could have kept their awesomeness at least isolated.
Yeah, I wonder if... Because they've made specific changes to just greater rifts, where obviously they removed a lot of the flippables, the bodies, and the stones and things like that. So it's not even as if you couldn't just change greater rifts. Because one thing I was thinking was maybe if they are tied so closely to normal rifts and greater rifts, like if they change when they have to change the other. But I mean, again, that example, they can do things in greater rifts that they're not changing about normal rifts. So does beg the question, why not just remove it altogether for the greater rifts?
Yeah. But, they wanted to keep them in there to add variety and randomness to the encounters. So then they're paying for that design decision by having to constantly go through and tweak it and find a balance and put a lot of their precious time into it.
Yeah, I mean the Pylon system was completely designed around randomness, but all this work they're doing now is just for the sake of reducing randomness. So they're kind of their own worst enemy right now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, but to some extent, that's kind of the way it has always been, though. We have talked about other parts of the game that they've touched where they really swing the pendulum one way completely, and then they slowly dial it back until it feels good. And to me, this kind of seems like one of those times where they're swinging it way too far to the nerf side, maybe, but maybe they'll start to bring it back. I guess but obviously both of you guys are right in terms of time. Like, how much time can they really afford to give to this when there's our next patches? We already know there's going to be a patch 2.2 and hopefully stuff beyond that. So it's kind of, how much do they really want to spend on this?
Yeah.
We shall see, though. Oh, there were other pylon changes too. Just very quickly, pylons will now be less likely to spawn next to each other, which was something I encountered. I actually have a picture on Twitter where there is a conduit pylon and a speed pylon right next to each other. It's like the holy, I was going to say Trinity, but I guess the holy duo or something. Is you just take that and run through. But speaking of speed pylons, they also changed them so that now you'll actually be able to break through doors and objects, barrels, etc. with the speed pylon, because it seemed kind of silly that you'd be cracked up on speed but not able to rush through a door.
Yep, definitely a very nice change. That was one of the problems. You're just moving so fast, you get held up by one little barrel before you realize it.
I know every time I'm cracked out on speed, I rush right through doors.
Like without fail.
Yeah, so
without fail.
1 point for realism, at least.
And maybe the best change ever, at least for everyone who loves to complain about drop rates, is that the rarest of items, such as your furnace, your star metal kukris, your tasker, and Theos,
yeah.
Those are all now easier to find. And we actually know the rates of how that has been changed too, which might lead us into the Legendary Workshop.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that was, I think, the most interesting part of the Legendary Workshop. And correct me if I get this wrong, because, I am a member of Westmarch Workshop, so I tend to misremember things. But I wrote it down when I was watching the Legendary Workshop. He was saying that all items have values on how often they drop, and before this patch, they're in the categories of 100 times, or 100, I guess, what would you even call it, 100 parts for the most common items, 50 for the medium items, and then 10 for the rarest. So you'll find the rarest items 10% as often as you'll find the most common items.
Yeah, I had a hard time wrapping my head around exactly how to express that, but yeah, those numbers are right, and I think that explanation is right.
Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And then in the new patch, they're adding some items to the item pool. So all items will be a little bit harder to find, but the numbers will be 150 and 25. So basically just the items that had a 10% chance of dropping compared to common items will now have a 25% chance to drop. So you'll be getting furnaces and rhyme hearts and Shard of Hate, I think, falls in that category, just under 2.5 times as often because there's more legendaries in the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at one point, John Yang, there were some different numbers thrown about when he was talking about the 150 and 25, and then just expressly talking about it. Because at one point, there was a question from the chat, and he said that the rarest items are 4 times as common as the most common items with this change. So somewhere in between 2.5 to 4 times.
Well, I mean, 4 times would make sense. Right now, with the change, the most rare items will drop 1/4. As often as the most common. Maybe that's what he meant? Or the more common items will drop 4 times as much as the most rare?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
Because it's 25 compared to 100.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is good. I mean, they were kind of talking about how their philosophy changed, where they now want you to be able to collect your full set. They, if you have certain items that you want, they didn't really get into what their old philosophy used to be, but they said their philosophy, Yang said that their philosophy changed so that now if you want a certain set, they want to make sure you're going to get it eventually, and then you'll have the ancient items to chase after that, instead of just, I guess, I don't know, the cross your fingers and hope for the best philosophy.
Yeah, especially for items like a Tasker or the Star Metal Kukri, which are this is a build defining item. In order to make the most of it, you have to have this. And making it so ridiculously rare was putting some people, it was definitely putting people off, because I can't compete at the higher grade of risks until I get this one item. And no matter how much I grind, it's just so rare. I could put 500 hours in and not come across it.
Yeah. And I think the two things that you guys both mentioned are tied together, because now that they have the ancient item tier, they can be a little more generous with upping that rate, because those players who are going to grind forever, they're going to find those items anyways, rare or easy to find. Those players who don't play a ton but have some time to allot to the game, they're going to have a better chance of finding those rare items, those build defining items, and so their side of things will be improved. But even for those people who are just grind all day, all night, their side of things isn't as affected, because they still have that upper tier to chase. So they have to get their ancient Tasker and Theo, or their ancient Unity or whatever. So seems like win-win all the way around.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an improvement.
Yeah, I guess you've made these super rare items more common, while at the same time you now have, even though they're not as rare, you now have that 10% chance of it being the ancient. So you have an even rarer, tier of item to find.
Yeah. Best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Agreed.
There was one thing that came out during the Legendary Workshop towards the beginning that I found really interesting, because we were talking about Rancer's Folly, the new Wizard Bracers, a few weeks ago, about how they didn't seem that good. They make it so that Energy Twister, the wizard skill, will occasionally pull in an enemy. And I was like, well, that's kind of dumb. If it pulled in everyone, that'd be useful, but just pulling one enemy seems so useless. But John Yang talking more about how it worked was actually kind of interesting. It makes me want to try them, because he said when they were originally designing them, they had this idea that Energy Twister would knock back enemies. So it'd be kind of like a defensive skill. I think it actually came from the community. I can't remember for sure. But that's kind of a frustrating part of Energy Twister, is not being able to get the enemy in the Twister. And so now that Energy Twister casts where you click instead of from you, they decided to kind of have it mimic that same knockback effect. But instead of knocking it away from you by casting the Twister, it's knocking it towards the Twister. But, and here was the reveal, it always pulls the enemy that's closest to you into the Twister. So it's still effectively, it's still effectively knocking the enemy back away from you, and so it still kind of uses it as a defensive skill, which seems a lot better than just pulling a random enemy into the Twister, at least.
Definitely.
Yeah. I actually like that. That's a really nice change that they're going through and making to it, and it's nice because it's with the bracer is such a weak slot, for most classes anyways. There's not a lot that's going on there. To add something to, one of those, to an item slot that just doesn't have a lot going on and giving you something to strive for, that you don't have to change up something in the rest of your gear set.
Yeah.
Listen, Embo, you're hurting the feelings of bracers. We like to call it a versatile slot, okay?
Poor bracers.
No, they definitely... I think that's great that we have slots like that, though, like bracers and like belts, where they can really add some interesting items to the game in those places, simply because there is no true best in slot, especially with the changes too. Well, I guess not the changes, but just the differences between, you have your witching hour, you have your, I don't know, Reaper's Wraps or whatever.
Speaking of bad slots, you guys totally left out shoulders. I feel like those have to be the worst.
They are the worst, but with most classes, it's part of your set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you have other slots such as like Taskers or Cinder Code or something else that you're going to be swapping out with your Ring of Royal Grandeur. So it's one of those ones where it's kind of the nature of the item slot itself. The helm, chest, shoulders are all usually, in pants are all, relatively boring in a lot of the effects that they have. There might be like one or two pieces of gear that kind of like really shine for that particular one, and that's what people will swap out for Royal Grandeur. But there's not a lot going on, and the way that they've designed the item system so far, it's kind of going to maintain that, because those slots are always going to be used for your set. And so they have to make something that will be either I have to break my 6-piece set bonus, or it's worth using a Ring of Royal Grandeur over like an SOJ or something along those lines.
Right, and I think that's why you see for Crusaders that they have so much versatility based on the shields, because that's a slot that, well, first of all, is specific to them, because they're required to use a shield, but also a slot that's not involved in any set except for the hollowed set. So there's a lot of room there for really interesting ideas, because you're making the choice to use one shield over another. It's not like you can wear two shields like you can wear two rings,
Yeah.
Dual wield shields.
Someone was saying that's what they wanted for a possible Crusader build. That would be really interesting.
It just looks so ridiculous, wouldn't it?
Anyone play Kingdom Hearts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, Goofy, right?
Yeah, Goofy. He uses his shield as a weapon, his one item. You could take the armor value and turn it into the actual weapon damage.
Huh. That would be interesting. Would you only be able to use shield skills like shield bash and shield clear and stuff?
Maybe? I don't know.
We'll have to theory craft
literally coming up with this as we discuss it, so I haven't gotten that far into it.
So I think might be a big difference on how players come up with ideas versus how devs come up with ideas. Because players' ideas always like sound really cool or look really cool, just like the concept itself. But players have rarely put in the time to actually think like, what would the gameplay be like? Where the devs tend to like start with gameplay. Players are just like, it would be so cool if I could shoot lightning bolts and use two shields and hop on a pogo stick. Whatever. It's like, it's not about the gameplay. It's about like the fantasy, just the idea itself.
That's actually a really good lead back into the Legendary Workshop, because they address specifically that, how the purpose of them doing something like the Legendary Workshop at BlizzCon, and then also doing this post-mortem speak, or stream, I should say, was for that purpose, in a way, to educate the community on what it takes to really design a compelling creation. Whether it's something that's has a really good fantasy behind it, and then they can build gameplay into it, or if it has really good gameplay and all they need to do is just design an item in a certain slot that it goes into. But that was kind of going back to, I think maybe it was a week or 2 weeks ago, when you were talking about the experience of getting the devs on stream for that the first Legendary Workshop thing. And just how a lot of the ideas were like, yeah, that sounds cool, but you have to think about art assets and you have to think about production value. And they went through in this workshop yesterday talking about, some of the cool ideas, like a barbarian pulling a dead body from the ground and using that as a weapon to swing at enemies and do extra damage, and saying how that's an awesome idea. But think of the art assets and think of, the production. What was mind-blowing to me was that Love said if they were to go ahead and do that, it's the equivalent of about 10 items that they could have created instead.
Yeah.
In terms of budget.
But didn't they already have that like half created with corpse toss?
Maybe. Was that a thing that Barbs could do before?
Yeah, wasn't it? That wasn't. Now I'm finally going to get something wrong. I believe it was either Ancient Spear or Weapon Throw. It was one of the runes. And instead of throwing the weapon, you'd actually throw a corpse.
Oh. We'll see if they have old, and I guess that's a thing too, right? If they have old things that they design, then hasn't the budget for that already been assigned and used? So
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, with the first Legendary Workshop, there was pretty much no art budget. It seemed like our only options were to use things that were already in the game. But it seems like they might have allocated a little bit more this time around. At least when they were talking about some of the potential visuals for the ring, which we still haven't talked about the ring, I guess.
Yes. You want to go in depth on that? Because we have a lot more details on how it might work.
Yeah. So basically, originally this was going to be a wizard source. They came up with it at BlizzCon. It rotates through the different elemental types you can deal, and it gives you a buff that John Yang seemed to think was going to be around 200% weapon damage, but had no idea. Like, don't quote me on that, because he threw out a bunch of numbers, but at least my thought was he thinks it's going to be around 200% damage buff to that specific school of magic during that part of the rotation. They changed it to a ring instead of a wizard source so that all classes could use it. And it's really kind of a tool for them to get players to use multi-element builds. Because John Yang was talking about how right now you're so limited as to what runes you can use, something we've talked about on the show a lot. And once you've decided your element, you're kind of done choosing runes. You just choose whichever one is your element type. But an item like this, because it will alter to the class, meaning it will change between elemental types that your class actually uses. It'll be viable for all the classes and can enable completely new combinations of runes that aren't used right now in the single element builds.
Yeah, that's really exciting. It sounds that it will be difficult to implement, but kudos to them for going through and doing it, because I think if they were to have it where it just rotated through all the available elements, it would definitely feel like a nerf to some classes, to the point where they might bypass it completely, since it's like, oh, well, 2 of the rotations on this are completely useless to me. So for that period of time, and they didn't say how long the rotations would be, but they did say the rotations were likely to be set, so it would go like fire, cold, ice, fire, cold, or cold is ice, fire, cold, lightning, fire, cold, lightning, etc. So you would be able to know and predict what your rotation would be accordingly. But yeah, you could have like 20 seconds if each rotation is 10 seconds and there are 2 elements on there that you couldn't use. That would just feel awful. So kudos to them again.
Yeah, I think this has to be the biggest gameplay change we'll have seen from a single item.
I think that's right. Yeah. Well, because I remember them talking about the Dead Mouse amulet, the Halcyon's Ascent, and how that was a difficult one for them to implement simply because it had to roll with an effect for the class that found it, and they hadn't done anything like that. Since the debuff, or the legendary power I should say, was tied specifically to a class skill. So on activation of that class skill, it would activate that jumping animation, and that was something they had never toyed with. So it required some extra love from the item design team.
Need some new tech. Something that they talked about that I think we actually got wrong on the show, surprise, surprise, which is this interesting item math that's different all the time. But the Skull Grasp that they showed at BlizzCon gave, like, I think it was like 441% increased damage to
Whirlwind.
And I had assumed that meant 4 times as much damage, like increasing the damage Whirlwind does by 441%. But it actually is just adding 441% weapon damage, so still really good. It's over doubling the damage of Whirlwind, but not nearly as good as we thought it was. Or at least had mentioned it might be.
I mean, that makes sense though, because when you take into consideration the fact that you'll use an item like that with the Whirlwind set and some of the bonuses on that set, like
it's already increasing the damage by 300% due to the set bonus.
Right, and the wording that they use there is like tripling and stuff. So I would hope that they would be consistent and say, like, if it's going to triple it, then they would say triple, and if it's going to be like additive weapon damage percent, then they would use the specific percentage.
Yeah, it's hard because sometimes it is going to actually increase the damage by 65%, and you can't really use like a triplet there. You can't be like increases it by 2/3. Like you don't want
to. Crazy fractions.
Yeah, and it's just it's been like that since I think same with Diablo 2 and probably Diablo 1. I can't remember that far back, but there's been a lot of confusing item affixes just because they only have so many words I think they can put onto an item affix before the item starts looking ridiculous. So sometimes the percentages you just have to guess, is this additive or multiplicative?
Yeah, no, that actually is a fair point.
Yeah, and then that just reminds me of like the link the high or the longest item name.
It's just like a contest
thing of the Jeep or something.
It's something that I've seen on Reddit a couple of times. It's like link your item with the longest name that you found. There'd be like just like blue weapons with these really long affixed names, and then people start breaking out the German, and it's like a paragraph for one item.
That's hilarious.
Indeed.
Yeah, they also talked during the workshop. They were talking about a lot of skills that they wanted to put in, but were just put too many particle effects on the screen. Just like computers couldn't handle it. Which is something we talked about at the last live stream. But one of them was that your mirror images would cast all of your skills.
Mm-hmm.
Which idea they said they really liked, but I guess I hadn't realized how much memory. I guess what's the most demanding part of the performance budget? I'm not sure. But anyway, I didn't realize how much performance just a single character took up, and they were talking about how when you cast mirror image, each one of those images is pretty much taking up the same amount of performance that a player's wizard would take up. And so once you allow them to cast all their spells, it's pretty much like adding 3 new players or 4 new players to the game when you cast mirror image.
Right, and he actually alluded to the build that we had talked about at one point, the ball lightning elemental arrow variation of the M6 Demon Hunter, where you're shooting out, was it like 4, 5, 6 elemental arrow ball lightnings at one time coming from multiple sentries, and it was just overloading the memory to the point where the server itself was breaking. And that's why they had to go ahead and kind of undo that with the changes they're making to the DH skills going forward in the next patch.
Yeah.
So there are some things, and if you even recall back to, I believe it was 1.0.8 when they made those density changes, and then when the expansion launched, and I think it was the patch right before the expansion, they then went and rebalanced the density, because I could recall so many times watching streams and stuff where they would get those critical mass wizards in and they'd be freezing everything, and then like the server would actually get to the point where the lag bar would go to red, but it wasn't even lag, it was just the fact that the server couldn't keep up with what was happening on the screen.
Yeah,
so much nonsense.
There's too much communication, too much stuff going on. They had so many enemies and so many effects being applied to them because they're just literally face rolling their keyboard with everything going off on a half second.
Literally face rolling. It's just like that was the best way to play back then. Is just
roll
your face across.
Mash that keyboard.
Oh boy! Yeah, talk about builds that give you hand cramps. The Sun Wukong monks were once complaining about.
Yeah, my brother actually got carpal tunnel like a few months after D3 came out, playing a Barbarian, and I felt lucky that I never had any wrist problems playing a CM wizard for years.
I'm surprised. You must have just gotten really good at it, because there were definitely some people who were saying they had to like quit playing for a while to get their hand back to normal.
Yeah, that was like my #1 question on stream for a while, is how do you play CM without your hand falling off?
That's something that you see like in esports a lot. People playing League of Legends and StarCraft and such, so doing so many actions, with their hand. They it's very high rates of repetitive stress injury and carpal tunnel.
Yeah,
very true. Hardcore.
Yeah, those are. What? Sorry.
No, that was just gonna be silly. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt your joke. I was gonna say is that's all I wrote down from the legendary workshop. Is there other things that you guys wanted to touch on?
That was the biggest. Those are the biggest things that I had seen. One of the things that came up and seems to come up quite often is the fact that wizards have a lot of skills on their bar that really just act as passives. And John Yang like very strongly came out and said, like, we recognize that that's a thing. We hate that that's a thing. We want to rework them to be similar to the companion skills of the DH, where there's an active element and a passive element, so that they're not just buffs that sit on your bar, but you can actually engage with them and utilize them. So the wizards will hopefully see some redesigns to those skills, like magic weapon and all those other ones that they use.
Yeah. Although I think it's a good change. I think it's I don't think it's a requested change. I think most wizards kind of like the idea that they can just focus on like 3 or 4 skills if they want to. But I think a lot of times players ask for boring content, like ask for boring gameplay, not realizing that it's going to get boring after a while. Just like, we want things easy and simple, and sometimes we don't realize the intricacies that the devs put in there to keep us from getting burnt out doing the same thing over and over again.
Right.
There was one other thing. I think that this was a topic that you wanted to talk about, Leviathan, was like the metrics that they kind of use to make decisions when they're going to balance things or add things to the game. Whereas we as the players only really have seen the one identifiable metric is the leaderboards. And that they're not actually going and using that as their number one priority for when they go and balance stuff or see where classes need help.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you for reminding me of that. I found that to be really interesting because someone asked basically how much do the leaderboards play into your class rebalancing and the items that you'll add to the game. If you see one class at the bottom, are they instantly going to be the next one to get a boost? And John Yang went and said they factor in to some degree, but they are not the end all be all. At the end of the day, it's just a little bit more information that they use, but they kind of have a bigger skill, a bigger way of determining which classes they'll focus on, which items they'll add. And yeah, so like Nineball was saying, I found that to be really interesting because it can actually help to create a disconnect between the community and the developers, because we have the leaderboards. That's the data that we can see on our side in terms of who's doing what and who's where. Like monks are here, barbs are here, crusaders are here, etc. But the devs, of course, have so much extra info on their side because they see tons of things that we can never see or get access to. And so what changes they might be making based on that full slate of info could look very different from what the players might come to agree is the necessary change to make X class equal with Y class. So just something to consider, that they will always be working from a greater set of data than we have, and what we might perceive to be as the most important change might not actually be what is the most important change.
In a lot of ways, it seems like it might have been easier to balance before greater rifts came in, because when there wasn't a metric for players to compare themselves to each other, then all that really mattered was that the players felt like their builds were balanced, right? You just had to feel powerful, and the metric of how often certain skills and certain builds were being used was a much more accurate metric back then, it seems, because it showed what abilities and builds players felt were powerful or preferred to play.
I guess it comes, it's like the risks that you take once you give the player base more information or more just more insight onto how the different classes rank up to one another. In World of Warcraft, it's easy because you can just look at DPS meters and simulation craft and such. There wasn't really too much of that in Diablo itself, because even though this class might do more DPS single target, it doesn't really translate well when you're doing an actual rift clear, or when you're doing the old Al-Kaiser runs, who could do it fastest and most efficiently without just like looking at times. Now that we have the leaderboard, we can see that barbarians are they're 10 levels above monks and witch doctors, like 53 versus 43, and so we have that, and now the dev team themselves are under a greater level of scrutiny because we can see these kind of some of these huge glaring issues. Although on the other side of it, that doesn't always translate into like actual data, because the reason why barbarians are performing that way is not because their class or their set is so good. They're performing that way because of conduit pylons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and as soon as this Conduit nerf goes into effect, we're not going to see barbarians, you know, that high, or at least at that huge of an advantage over other classes with, you know, just the regular power creep from ancient items and such. I'm sure we'll probably continue to see classes being able to hit Greater Rift 53 and such, but, you know, you're not going to have, hopefully, that huge of a difference between everybody. That even though you might still have barbarians at the top, and you might say cap out at like 60 with all the Greater Rift changes and such, you know, witch doctors and monks and such might be at 54, 56. You know, hopefully, you know, crunch that down a little bit more, and then when we go into 2.2, then we will see, or not 2.2, whatever, you know, season 3, or I guess it is. They said in the legendary stream 2.2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Call it 2.2, yeah.
Yeah. We'll see some new sets added in, you know, and new items, and hopefully that will help bring that balance and a lot of the redesigns for the old sets.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Is that some of the things that would seem like they would make a big change, like obviously changing the Raycore set will do a lot for bards in terms of taking away some of their utility and giving them utility where they didn't have it previously. But just the change to conduits, like you mentioned, will also make a big difference on the leaderboard. So again, it's things that you have to look at the entire picture, how one small tweak can have a ripple effect and change something way over on the right side that you never even thought, because you were just focused on the left side over here of this set, this character, this class, etc. Another thing, real quick, that I did want to point at from that legendary workshop, the question and answer portion, someone was asking about making the gems, just regular gems, I suppose, better in order to compete with emeralds, which is a classic question and request. You know, can we put something else that isn't green in our weapons? And John Yang actually noted, he said, you know, we could buff up the elite damage on diamonds to a point where it would be equivalent to the amount of critical hit damage you get from an emerald. But he says he's actually more interested in just designing cooler legendary gems that give you different effects, better effects that you might want to then put into your weapon. And I think that's kind of the being able to see the long-term process and the short-term goals as they're accomplished, because we're getting the Gem of Ease with the next patch, which is the first legendary gem that can go into a weapon. And so that's kind of the test of, like, you know, how popular is this gem going to be? Is it going to work in terms of putting it into weapons? And I think it's a safe bet on their part, because anyone wants to get the leveling process over with quickly. So you'll see the Gem of Ease getting used for the simple fact that it'll help people level up alts much faster. And so that's a way for them to say, okay, we did the one legendary gem for weapons and it worked out well. What other ones can we design? And it kind of opens up that floodgate.
Yeah, lag in chat is going through and, you know, saying jewels. That's the first thing that I thought of when they started talking about it. It's like, who needs emeralds when we got some 4015s to sock into weapons?
4015s. There's a throwback.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I think the Gem of Ease isn't the best test to see if it's going to work in weapons, because it doesn't really apply to, you know, the same areas that the new legendary gems would. It's only used when you're leveling up. So it's not competing, at least, you know, in the actual playing field of max level, greater rifts and all that. It's not competing with emeralds right now. I
guess that's why I say it's safe, right? Because it has a very intended and specific use. So I guess my point there is just that it will be used, and so it's a gem that they introduce, and it doesn't feel like wasted development because it has a purpose. Versus if they design a gem that's for weapons and they throw it in there, but it just doesn't even work right in the way that would compete with emeralds, and they're going to be like, oh man, this project failed. Let's never make a weapon or a legendary gem for weapons again.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice. I mean, yeah, I think just buffing the values of the current gems isn't a great solution, because you're still going to have, even if they could balance them really close, you're going to have this gem's best if you're doing this build, this gem's best for that build. It's never going to be a real choice, just like we don't really make much of a choice in the rest of our gear.
Yeah, I mean, it would be more interesting than just emeralds, you know. And if you actually have something that, even though, you know, Crusaders are always going to use legendary gem X, but then Barbarians are always going to use Legendary Gem Y. It does give some diversity across the entire player base, which is going to be better than just literally everyone using Emeralds.
No, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that I was against the Legendary Gems, but rather that just buffing like diamonds and rubies and amethysts might not be very exciting, because we're always going to use something that gives us damage in our weapon, and so it's really like, do you want to get damage this way, or do you want to get damage this way, or do you want? It's like, it's not changing the gameplay, it's not changing your character at all. You're just you know, looking on the spreadsheet to see which one raises your damage the most. So something like jewels or legendary gems in the weapon, I think, is a good way to fix it. I guess it's a shame that the other gems still have to just sit there collecting dust.
And then this is where Blizzard does like a complete 180 and actually turns Diablo into a MMO, and the way that they accomplish that is by making a legendary gem you socket into your weapon that, instead of hurting enemies, heals allies. So you'll have a monk that then sits there and is, you know, fists of thunder on the group to heal them every time that they attack.
Relegating the monk to their truly intended purpose of ZDPS.
ZDPS.
Best follower NA. Ouch.
That's pretty funny.
Signed and sealed. You put the final nail in the coffin there, bud.
Yeah,
Spoilers.
There probably are a lot of players that would love a healer class, but yeah, it definitely, I don't think it would work out very well.
Not
quite. Probably not. Probably not.
I mean, the reason it works well in MMOs is largely because of the interface. As a healer, you're not really looking at the fight; you're looking at everyone's nameplates. It wouldn't be very Diablo to just sit there, standing in the back of the fight, clicking on nameplates.
I've never actually played a healer, but I've been told that the experience is like playing whack-a-mole.
Yeah, you're playing like a mini game while everyone else is doing the raid or whatever. I like it though.
Which health bar has turned the most red? Let me heal that one.
Yeah, it could be like a mobile game on its own. It's pretty funny.
So was there much else to go through and cover in the news? I know we mentioned this before in our weekend gaming, but I'm still really sad that Thibbledorf didn't win the Play Away Thursday. We let you down. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Tried.
Sorry. I mean, you're welcome.
Rally the troops. You're welcome. You didn't win. It's our new stance.
We tried our best. You're welcome.
Yeah, no, it's a bummer. I'm curious to see who will get it. I guess it's probably going to be next week, right? Because we would usually have had the announcement of who will be on there and who won and whatnot by now.
Yeah. Though this is like you know, this is the screwy time when a lot of people are going through and taking vacations, and some of the production aspects within Blizzard kind of shut down for this period. I guess if it does come up, we should get the announcement. You know, we should at least get the post for announcing the winner tomorrow, and hopefully, if everything lined up, it will be the live stream itself on the 18th. And just have confirmation announcement tomorrow. So there you go. Yep. So
very nice.
Yep.
Cool. And the last I looked, the DH Lightning build had won, so we'll see a Demon Hunter on there for the first time.
Yeah.
So the last ones were Crusader, Witch Doctor. No, Crusader, Witch Doctor, Crusader. Is that right? Because the Wizards have won twice, but both time Wizards haven't been there, so it was Crusader in second place.
Yeah.
Us Wizards never showing up where we're supposed to be.
Your teleport misfired. I wanted to go on the live stream, but somehow I ended up in Duras of Hatred.
In terms of other news items, there was one that just literally happened moments ago before we went live. There's a hot fix going out that's going to require the PTR to come down sometime tonight, maybe tomorrow, where the M6 set actually has a bug that the sentries are still doing crazy damage. And I think they're also buffing the DH at the same time. So DHs are just doing like insane. It's like the best this set has ever been.
Yeah.
Like, this is too good. We have to reset the leaderboards. We have to change this bug fix. So any of the DH leaderboards and the ones that were affected, the 2-player, 4-player, 3-player, those will all get reset and the set should get a fix.
Nice. Well, should we move on into some feedback?
Yeah, I guess just one other thing. Nevelistus just dropped in and answered a tweet that we had earlier today after we put together the show notes, saying that, and just basically confirmed that you can actually roll the Hellfire amulet, and I imagine the Hellfire ring, as ancient when we go into 2.12.
Good to know. That's sexy.
And an add-on to that too, I was actually doing some bounty farming on the PTR before we started, and you can get bounty-only legendaries as ancient versions of themselves.
Nice.
So get ready for the ancient Ring of Royal Grandeur hunt.
Now the absolute most important question ever is, can we get an ancient Staff of Herding?
Do you get to go to ancient Whimsyshire?
That would be awesome. And then ancient Whimsyshire is actually the Moo Moo farm. That would be
that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I was thinking more literally, like it would just be like an old run-down version of Whimsyshire, where things starting to fall apart and the stuffing's coming out of all the teddy bears.
Yep. But awesome.
But no, yeah, the D2 Calil, I like that too.
The ponies are all like shambling. They're all slow and old, and there's like a glue factory right close by.
Or you do it like they did with some of the demons in Act 5, how they just had part of their model disappeared and you could see the skeletons inside. So just have like these rotting zombie ponies and teddy bears running through Whimsyshire.
That works. There's weeds that have taken over all the flowers, and yeah, I like it. Ancient Whimsyshire.
Make it a thing.
Go Gibbs. Well, we got some more novels this week, which we don't mind, by the way. Feedback is always good. We will read your novels. Well, at least so far we haven't had an email that was too long to read. There's a challenge right there. Give us an email. I'm asking for the wrong challenges.
That was actually one of the more interesting things that I read this week, was like the longest piece of like literature, or at least fiction, that a human has produced is actually like a Smash Brothers fanfic.
Really?
It's 4 times the length of War and Peace.
Wow.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Now I got to read this.
Because they just keep adding to it.
It's never ending.
It is apparently very bad.
Like begging, stop writing this thing.
Please stop adding more. I can't stop reading it. All right. Well, I'll take one of these novels. This was actually a little bit shorter, but I want to make sure I say the name right, because I got a little bit of flack this week. But Xiophis, I'm going to guess, from BlizzPro? From the BlizzPro clan?
Maybe.
Xiophis? Anyways, he sent in his own wizard build. Hardcore wizard build he'd been playing around with. He really wanted to get the Aether Walker. Actually, he didn't think it seemed that good at first, but wanted to play out with the Calamity Rune on teleport. So the Aether Walker for wizards allows you to not have a cooldown on teleport. Technically, quote-unquote, no cooldown. It still gives you a little split-second cooldown, but it costs arcane power instead of having the full cooldown, so you can just spam teleport all over the place. It's a nice little wand, and he wanted to try the Calamity because it does damage and knocks back when you teleport in. And I actually, when I was leveling, I got an Aether Walker, actually right after I hit max level, and I was doing this with Calamity, but I had like another main attack. The difference here is Xiophis is just using Calamity as his main attack. His other skills are just all support skills. He's using Frost Nova, Ice Armor, and then Familiar and Magic Weapon. So just in true wizard style, 3 skills that just buff him and do nothing else. And then and then he has his main primary attack is Magic Missile. But most of his damage is just coming from Calamity. He's stacking some AP cost reduction so he can just teleport around. And it seems like a lot of fun. It seems very defensive, which is good for hardcore. The only thing I would say, if you care about optimizing, is you're not going to do much damage. Calamity, I can't remember the actual percentage on it. I think it's under 300%. I should have looked it up. But it's very low compared to like main skills that you could put there. I think 9ball might do some research for me here. But yeah, a fun build. You might want to try out if you get an Aether Walker. He said it was working out pretty well. You can keep enemies CC'd with Frost Nova and Ice Armor, and and the knockback from Calamity kept them away from him.
Yeah, it's 175% weapon damage.
Oh yeah, so you're not gonna be. Maybe if you're farming normal, you're doing some bounties or something, you can get some good clear speeds in there, but you're not gonna be climbing the Greater Rift leaderboards.
He's just a very patient man. He's in Greater Rift 40, and he's still doing it as we speak.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna make it work, damn it.
Small cuts.
Living the dream.
It's pretty funny. You guys want to grab an email?
Sure. I will take the one that we were talking about before, which is from Venton. Or Vincent. I almost said it wrong too. Oh boy.
Very careful.
Starting off strong.
Yeah.
Or Horace. I think Horace works too.
Yes, Horace or Venton. And he went through and gave us some constructive feedback that we were discussing before we started the show. But he says he doesn't mean to troll, and he means it all in good faith. And basically, some of his thoughts were that one thing he doesn't understand why people keep arguing for is more stash space, because more stash space equals more server load, and the same would go for blood shards, which is an interesting counter argument to that I hadn't thought of. He said if they raise the blood shard cap, all of the interwebs will become our blood shards. It might have been a bit of...
Sorry. I was saying...
No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. The initial argument wasn't a great argument. I don't know if it was a serious argument either, like giving you more stash space, like... It's not like they don't actually have the server space to give us more stash space. But just in reference to the email, increasing the blood shard limit wouldn't actually take up any more space on the servers because it's just changing a number, where giving you more stash space would actually take up more space on the servers since they have to have information for each of the items.
Mm-hmm. And then he goes on in the next paragraph to say it basically undercut that he was being a bit playful there, that he believes that that's a really cheap argument with the current itemization because if you play every class and you play multiple builds of every class, then you're going to have an incredibly hard time managing your inventory and have to delete characters, etc., etc. So there is obviously a space issue, and he hopes that there will be a way to circumvent that going forward. So, yeah, there are other things in here too, as far as RNG and talking about Kadala.
Yeah, I think he's mostly agreeing with us on the 500 blood shard cap and that it should be raised.
Yeah. That's basically the gist of this here. So, but like I was saying before too, maybe there were two ways to really address the issue in terms of the one that we were most heavily alluding to with the blood shard packs and getting those lottery raining of tons of blood shards, is that you either make sure that type of event can't happen anymore, or you up the blood shards. And it really seems like they went the other way and said, well, you're not going to get that special moment anymore, which is the way I didn't want them to do it, which is sometimes I wonder if you call attention to things that you want changed. I almost wonder sometimes if it's better to just not say anything at all, because it can't get better or worse, right? Like it'll just stay the same. But if you call attention to it, they're going to take it one way or the other. And if they take it the opposite way, then you're just like, you know what, screw it. I shouldn't have said anything in the first place.
Yeah, I would love to see a blue post or some kind of response going over why they don't want to raise the blood shard limit.
Mm-hmm. See, you bring attention to it because you think the most logical way of solving this issue is to do X, and then they do Y, and you're like, no.
Yeah.
This is true. Oh well, we're still in PTR, so who knows? Anything could change, right?
True story. So yeah, we got mostly items of the week this week. Was there another?
Yeah, there's one that I wanted to go through. This one came in from Power Axes. He just wanted to give a shout out to the show, that he loves us, and I also wanted to go through and share his own experiences with some of the problems that he's done with, like public speaking or doing podcasts, and the huge number of mistakes that are not huge, but the few mistakes that he's made over time, and that even his handle power axes came from a slip of the tongue in a comedy VHS tape that a group of his friends made, and thankfully has been lost and will never be seen again. And that makes me want to see this comedy VHS tape just to see how bad it could possibly have been. But yeah, thanks for the shout out there.
Yeah, that's cool.
And he's also a member of the clan too, so good old Power Axes. See him often.
All right, well, we have some items of the week to go over.
I guess one more thing, just since they're going through and talking about chat, I don't think that we really mentioned it too much on the show itself, but it also, for those of you who are watching live, obviously you've noticed it already, or those on YouTube, we have a new little overlay with the little Christmas spirit. It's got the little Santa hat on it. If you're listening to iTunes or Stitcher, this at least for the next couple episodes, catch one of them on YouTube so you can see all the great work that Dread Scythe from the Scythe and Shield podcast put in, making us this lovely new little overlay. Yeah. So, yeah, props to him. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and actually this is a good time with the Christmas spirit and the holidays around. I would like to share a little bit of love with all the other podcasts in the community too, because there's some really good guys and gals out there who produce other stuff. Obviously we have a great relationship with Dread Scythe, and he put together both of our layouts that we use now, with the festive one and the non-festive one, or the regular festive one, I should say, and the holiday festive one. So we're always festive. But there's also Scythe and Shield, which is a great podcast that they just reworked, and Dread Scythe and JC Monkey are the hosts over there. There's also Cool Story Bro, which is one of my favorites just from the name alone. They put out a great show that comes out, I think, every Monday or Sunday. It's right after the weekend usually is over. They put theirs out. And also, what's the other? Blanking on the name. The one with Nevik. Shattered Soulstone.
The Shattered Soulstone. They're semi-regular. I think they do like 2 a month.
Just about, yeah. It's Nevik and Brazia and Lantonio and who's the girl? I forget what her name is. I'm so bad. But they put on a great show. They have really good conversation.
Yeah.
I'm so bad.
And then of course we have to give props over to Flux and the Ink Gamers podcast.
Good old Flux.
It wouldn't be prudent to not throw him out there.
Of course.
Yeah.
Jen, yes, Jen. Thank you.
Yeah.
She's the 4th part of Shattered Soulstone. So yeah, if you guys ever want to branch out from the workshop, although we always hope you stay and come back.
If they branch out, they're going to realize how many things we're wrong about, though.
Then we get more feedback, see? Westmarch Workshop at blitzpro.com.
There you go.
Yeah, check it out. And before we go into the items of the week, I just want to remind you guys that we love your feedback. Send us your items of the week, questions, comments, anything else. Beer as well, as Leviathan is pointing to.
Oh, that's apple juice today. I'm being good.
You're drinking apple juice out of a giant mug. That's
so my friends designed this for me for my 22nd birthday. So a girl at Starbucks where I was working at the time made this. It says it had a lot more stuff on it, but they all washed away.
Oh wow. Yeah, it might as well be prop beer. Looks just like. Anyways, you can still send us beer if you want to. But all of that feedback stuff, send us to westmarchworkshop at blitzpro.com. And we got a good amount of items this week from you guys. So we start with this amulet from Merseyside. Merseyside sent in a plethora of items. Just started watching the show, wanted to catch up, and I picked this Hellfire amulet because I'm always amazed anytime I see a Hellfire amulet that rolls well, and I think it needs to be shown off. It has 743 strength. Now I think this is live. It's not an ancient Ami. Not on PTR, but 743 strength, 87 crit damage was re-rolled onto there, 8.5 crit chance, and a socket with the Wrathful passive. So hard to get rolls like that.
Yeah, and this is. Sorry, go ahead.
I was about to say, from what I have learned from Leviathan for amulets for Crusaders, that is near perfect.
I was just going to say that Wrathful isn't the most useful of the passives, just because that's the one that returns life per Wrath spent, which is actually a very powerful stat in terms of healing. But one that you might, well, the thing, I guess, the best way to put it is that there aren't any that are like so needed that you are looking to add more passes to your slots. You could maybe say that it is the case for the Stampede build, because you have to add Lord Commander, and then that kind of shakes up the meta of the passives Crusaders use. But I was just going to say that this proves how hard it is to get a really good Hellfire amulet, because the primaries are insanely good, but the passive, you would have preferred like a Heavenly Strength that gives you the opportunity to hold a two-hander with a shield, and that would be a much more conducive passive to, oh my goodness, what's the word, variety, so that you could use it in a different variety of builds and things like that. But it's just hard. So this is a really good amulet, if not for the fact that he got really good primaries.
Yeah. Let's see, going on. Pinky sent us in one of 2 Tasker and Theos we got this week. So 9-ball. And this we got 2 really good ones. We might have gotten our best Tasker ever this week. And you guys be the deciders. This one has 743 dex, 6 attack speed, 49 crit damage. That was re-rolled, but I believe you said it originally rolled 30-something crit damage. 10 crit chance, and maximum of 50% attack speed from pets. Really could not have gotten much better.
No, I mean, really, the only thing that you would want to be better on that is just the 7% attack speed. And, I mean, as far as it goes for the Marauders build, as of this moment, that is insane. It really is. Getting the max attack speed for pets, as well as attack speed on the gloves, is that's going to be pushing you well towards your 4.15 breakpoint.
That's awesome. And let's see, the other Tasker and Theos were sent in from Anarchy. I can't remember which ones were better, but these ones, let's see, had 693 dex, a little bit lower in the dex, 6 attack speed, rerolled to get 50 crit damage, 10 crit chance, and then 49 attack speed from pets. This one, just a hair worse, I guess, because of the dex roll, but still close to perfect.
Yeah, still a very good item. That is worthy to drool over.
Yeah, I'm jealous. I'm jelly.
The jelly. Let's see, and Horace, or Horacey as you like to call him, sent in a plethora of items, and I chose the Compass Rose. Not because, I don't know if it was the best item there, but you don't see people using good Compass Roses very often. I mean, you don't see good Compass Roses very often, I should say. But this one was worth wearing. It has close to maximum average damage, dex, crit damage, and crit chance, and then rerolled to get a socket.
Yeah, this is straight up really strong DPS ring. Probably good for when you're not using like a Unity or something.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to get that at, say, the beginning of the season while you're still grinding for your SOJ or your Unity or your Ring of Royal Grandeur, that would set you ahead of the curve for a while.
Especially because the green jewelry drops a decent amount. So if he got an even decent Traveler's Pledge, then you're activating the 2-set bonus there too, so you get extra crit damage on there and a little bit more survivability with the extra vit.
Yeah. Well, next one is from Sarnakyle? I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but sent in a Unity that is pretty nice, and he wanted our opinion. He hadn't gotten one Unity and then got them both like back to back. And this is the one on his Demon Hunter, I believe. It has 432 dex, 6 attack speed, 6 crit chance, 14% damage against elites, and he wants to know what should he reroll. And he's playing Demon Hunter, so I'll let 9-ball weigh in here.
Yeah, that one is actually pretty hard to say. Between it, I don't know. It almost come down to maybe the dexterity to try and get as a socket, because I mean, depending upon how close you are to reaching your breakpoints, if you're nowhere near getting towards one of the breakpoints, attack speed would be the one that is like kind of useless, especially going into the next patch. I don't know if this is a seasonal character or not, looking towards the future, once the Marauder set changes, attack speed is going to be the one that you'd want to re-roll in long term. But yeah, I think other than that, as it stands right now, it's kind of a toss up, like with the decks, as wanting to go through and turn that into a socket for the legendary or one of the legendary gems.
Yeah, it depends on which metagame you're playing for, either the right now or the long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just going through and kind of taking a gauge of what the rest of his gear looks like. I might just say attack speed, just because it looks like you're probably going to be a while. You're using since he's using a bow and a quiver instead of like a one-hander, you're probably quite a bit away from reaching the 4.15 breakpoint, especially using Gladiator's gloves and Autotasker and Theo. So as your gear stands right now, yeah, just go for the attack speed. That would probably be the biggest increase for you overall, since it's not really going to be helping you out too much, and in the future, it's not going to really do anything for you at all. That will get you the most bang for your buck as it stands right now, and eventually, you'll find another unity that you could always go through to mess around with later.
Oh, there you go.
Mm-hmm. Sound advice.
Well, the last item we got is from, I know I'm saying this wrong, so I apologize, but Gualami? I don't know. I'm going to stop there. But we got this ancient haunt of Vaxo. And wow, it's crazy to see 1,000 dexterity on an amulet. But there it is. 1,000 dexterity, 99 crit damage, 10 crit chance, and a socket, and he hasn't re-rolled anything yet.
Nope.
It's ridiculous. This thing is like perfect. Is it hacked? Like, is this real?
I know. Like, you can't. There's not even like a point to re-rolling anything on that item.
Jesus.
You gonna try to get that 99 up to 100?
It's the kind of thing where it's like, I hope you just got really lucky and haven't been playing PTR for too long, because I would just feel bad. Like, this is too good.
Yeah.
That's why I don't play PTR much anymore.
Because
this is what happens when you got PTR and then you can't get anything once you're on live.
Still, it's like just seeing 1,000 dexterity on something that isn't a two-hander is still just wow.
Just looks so it's just that's too many digits. What's going on? Like, it looks hacked just automatically because of the extra digit.
Right.
Well, man. Congratulations. Too bad it's PTR.
Yep.
Well, that's all our items and feedback for the week. This is I think our shortest show in a while. But we kind of knew that going in, I guess.
Indeed, we did. We did. Yeah, I mean, there wasn't too many things in terms of breaking news or huge news from the community, so that always shortens that part of the segment. And the feedback was a little short too. We miss you guys. Communicate with us.
Yep. Although, I mean, it is, even though there wasn't that much as far as feedback to talk about on the show, we did get a lot of requests in order to join our live stream over the weekend. So we did have, quite a few people going and emailing us, to come and join. I know there was a lot of people that either didn't respond, didn't show up, or they had last minute plans. I'm sorry if we missed you, or due to scheduling conflicts you had to drop. Definitely, this is something that we had a lot of fun doing on Saturday, doing the Diablo 2 stream, and it's something that we hope to do, again in the future. Maybe not just Diablo 2, get some Diablo 3 in there at some point. We might, obviously we can't do as many fans, playing with us in D2 with the player limit, but it's something that we'd like to do again in the future. So, look forward to that in future episodes.
Yeah, and my computer can run D3, but for some reason can't run D2, it seems. It was ahead of its time. I guess so. I was getting like 1 frame per second playing D2. It was a lot like just watching you guys play and hoping my skeletons were killing things.
Picked a good class for it.
Yeah. Worked out. Well, I guess that's it. Any last words before we start the outro here?
At this point, no. Just looking forward to the holiday season. Looking forward to that end of season 1 announcement, which has to be imminent, I hope. And otherwise, just grinding, still grinding, trying to climb those leaderboards.
Yeah. Today there was an update to the D3 game guide to recap the story of Reaper of Souls. So you have the entire history of Diablo from beginning to present available on the website in case you missed the story playing through the game, and you just can never not click that adventure mode button when you're actually playing the game.
There you go. Something to do from now until our next podcast. Just read all the lore.
All of it.
And as we start the outro, I have to apologize. Last outro was quite silent, and we realized too late. So if you're wondering why you couldn't hear anything but Nineball and Leviathan chuckling, it's because I'm an idiot. And this outro will not be muted. And if you want to catch us live, we do this pretty much every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/ArchonTheWizard. The podcast also goes up on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. And you can tweet us at NineballGamer, at SAStewart111, and at ArchonTheWizard, or the official Twitter of the show at the WM Workshop. And we read all that as well as the feedback, so send it in. You get your stuff read on the show. And we'd just like to talk to you.
Yeah, again, our email address, if you want to send in items, is the Westmarch Workshop at blizzpro.com.
Yeah. Know the email address. Send us in, talk to us, let us know what you're doing on PTR and the likes. We'll see you next week.
Arrivederci.
All right.
And clear.
As we go into the after show, I'm going to take a quick AFK. I'll be right back.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Yeah, it feels weird being done before 8 p.m. my time.
I know, yeah. 11 o'clock on the East Coast here. It is kind of, when you become accustomed to just hitting it at a certain time, you're like, oh, wait, did we do something wrong? Is it bad that we're short?
Did we forget a section?
Right. It's just that ebb and flow. Ebb and flow.
Yeah, well, WifeCon will like this, because I haven't seen her much the last week. We keep having plans at opposite times, or same times, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Brandy said she was able to start listening on the way home.
Oh, nice.
I had a friend that was listening to a podcast during a road trip, and he was holding the phone, like, up near his ear so he could hear it better. And he got pulled over for talking on the phone while driving.
Oh, no.
But he said... Now, see, here's where me and my friend differ, because I would have disputed that I was talking on the phone, but he just, like, went with it. He felt like it was pointless to argue the cop. He just accepted the ticket for talking on the phone while driving.
What?
Yeah.
No, I would have at least, at the very least, explained the situation. But like, there's this thing called Twitch. I have these friends on here that talk to me. I hear voices coming from the phone.
Yeah.
But I don't talk back, so it's not a phone call.
Okay,
but...
let's give it to Nineball. See what he would do.
All right.
Nineball, you're on a road trip and you're listening to a podcast on your phone.
Yep.
You're holding the phone up close to your ear, but you're not like on the phone. You're listening to a podcast. But lo and behold, a police officer pulls you over and writes you a ticket, or at least starts to, for talking on the phone. Would you dispute it?
Well, considering I've seen somebody that, pretended to be talking on a phone, but it was actually a cookie, and he still got a citation anyways.
What?
He still got a traffic ticket. Yeah. He basically, what it is he did this specifically as a prank. He had phone-shaped cookies, and he had it up to his head as he was driving around, specifically going and looking for cops. And he had it there. He got pulled over, and then the cop came up and he took a bite out of it, and it's like, would you like a cookie? The cop was not amused. And so he still wrote him up, and he was. And his follow-up was, "I'm so sorry. This is the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. I'm never doing it again." And to answer the question, our car has Bluetooth, so I wouldn't be holding it up to my head anyways.
Yeah, but for the stereo only works.
You gave 2 troll answers. God damn it,
So no, I'm not going to answer your question, and no, I'm not going to answer your question.
Yep.
I feel like
That's
at
my
least
story. I'm sticking to it.
Like the cookie thing, if you went to court, you should be able to at least contest it at court, right?
I think what it was. It was something along the lines of like reckless driving, or is what the cop ended up giving him the ticket for, or like public endangerment, because he was eating or taking his attention off of the road. And just,
so is it illegal to eat in your car? Like that's not a rule. That's not a law.
Yeah.
Like it's up to the discretion of the officer, I suppose, but that seems like an overreach of his or her duty to protect those who are on the road. Because if I'm dying, if I haven't eaten in weeks, I don't know why this would ever happen. Like this, take it to the extreme, right? And I have a car for some reason, but I haven't eaten in weeks. I'm on this crazy road trip, and I need sustenance in order to stay in my lane. What's worse, stopping, giving me a ticket for not eating, or not eating and then running over some person or something?
I think you can make the same case for talking. I agree with you that you should be able to eat while driving, and the ticket was bogus. But I think that argument could also be made when you made for talking on the phone. Like if you severely injure yourself while driving, and you have to call an emergency number to keep from passing out, you can't get off the road or something. You could make the same case, and I think in certain situations the police would maybe cut you some